Hi, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Risk, where our goal is to engage, inspire, and empower the global community of risk practitioners. I'm your host, Naveen Agarwal. And guys, today I'm super excited to welcome my guest, Brette Travaglio. She's the president of Quality Solution Network, providing expert consulting services for drugs, medical devices, and combination products. Brett has many years of industry experience in R&D, quality, regulatory affairs, and process improvement. So she has seen it all, the good, bad, the ugly of risk management. And we're going to talk about what challenges we come across in the practice of risk management. She has seen so many examples and she has so many best practices to share. I can't wait to get started with this conversation. So, with that, Brett, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Hello, Naveen. Hi, I appreciate you having me today, and I'm super excited to talk about risk management and some of the challenges.
Awesome. So let's start with that. The practice of risk management obviously is hard. I know it becomes difficult at the ground level. Share with us some of the key issues that you have seen in your practice.
Right. Well, let me first start talking about the first challenge I see is cultural resistance. I think we still see companies having difficulty in accepting risk management as a tool for better decision making. I know that risk is often seen as a blocker rather than an enabler. So, what I mean by this is every functional area probably has their own ideas about the importance of risk management. Every company is different. Risk management is still, I think, seen as a paper exercise, tedious, time consuming, and non value added. That's one. And then we also have siloed functions, where, who owns the risk management program? Is it
Mhm,
quality? Is it R&D, or is it post-market release engineering or something
mhm,
other? We also see people misaligning on risk tolerance. Different departments often view risk differently. So you might
mhm,
have medical that deems something to be more critical than someone, say, in manufacturing engineering. And then
mhm,
incomplete communication, I see a lot.
mhm,
I have worked with companies where the quality systems don't exactly interconnect properly. And so the systems aren't talking to each other properly, and we're not seeing risk, which you should see as a circle of information coming in from complaints and back in through engineering and making resolution. Um, and then lastly, lack of clear roles. Even though it's
mhm.
specified in the procedures, it may not be clear, it may be ambiguous. So those are really the
Got you.
top areas.
I love this. I love the notion that you are sharing a circle of information. It has to flow. There has to be flow. But I was curious, Brett, do you see these problems mostly in large companies or they're all over the place, small to mid size? Is it like a common problem all across the board or things are slightly different, large versus small organizations?
Right. Well, I definitely work with small, medium, and large companies. So I think I've seen pretty much all of it. I think smaller companies or startups, you tend to see a lot more challenges. They don't always have the financial uh, resources to start implementing consultants or employees that have this expertise. Um, and so, that's one part of it. Um, yeah,
Nice. Nice. So, certainly risk is everywhere. We know it's a cross functional exercise and activity. It requires a lot of different inputs. So, let's pick, one of the challenges that you have come across, which you mentioned clear roles and responsibilities. Tell us a little bit more about that. And what are some of the best practices you have seen in, helping improve that situation?
right. Well, I would say, some of the best practices that I've seen, or I would like to say are most important to me, are training for improved collaboration. But basically, what I'm seeing, and I'll explain that a little bit more detail, but what I'm seeing in these cross functional teams is that, they're not communicating to each other, they're not sharing information together. And so, what I like to do is train for improved collaboration. I want this to be a very
Mhm.
conscious initiative before starting up a risk management program.
That is an interesting concept. Because it seems to me that what you are saying is yes, we want collaboration, but it's not going to happen spontaneously on its own. We have to prepare the groundwork. We have to help people with some tools to collaborate. Say a little bit more about what you mean by that.
I agree. So one of the things I found is there's a lot of turnover in companies, or just job rotation type of situations where even your R&D engineers, have not been in that position for very long, and they might even be new to the project. So what I like to do is start out these risk management activities with everybody having product in their hands. You need to have a good drawing. You need to have a good digital image. You need to know the inner workings visually of what that product looks like so you can see the mechanics of it. Um, like I said, these engineers don't always have that information available to them. As we see sort of a shift, what I'm seeing, anyways, is a shift. Um, to more contract manufacturing. This has
Mhm,
been going on for 20 years or more, and not all of the facilities are sharing the same product resources, and
mhm,
so that can lead people astray, really.
mhm. So everyone has to be on the same page in terms of their level of understanding, what the product is, where it's coming from. And you are
Exactly.
saying that it's important. And, engineers might have a different level of knowledge versus quality engineers versus regulatory people. And it's important for everybody to have this common understanding. So, Brett, how do you actually execute this? Do you pull together like as the project is going on, do you pull together like a couple of sessions, a meeting, get people to get to know each other, and then explain how does it work in practice? Can you share something
Right.
about that?
So what I've done and what I've actually seen a couple companies do is that they have a kickoff meeting to any
Mhm,
risk activity. Now, right now, I'm really speaking about upstage when the product is in development, right? So, you have to, you know, get everybody together and, make sure that you can have a kickoff meeting, and I'm talking 2 to 3 hours, 4 hours, not much more than that, but you need to have a
mhm,
session where you sit down and level set everyone. Does everybody understand the product the same way? Can medical chime in, and give their perspective? Can quality engineering, who might be looking at other information, tolerances, whatever it might be,
mhm,
you need to have a kickoff meeting that really talks about a good product and how it functions, because it's
mhm.
not, you can't assume that the engineering group always knows. They should,
Yeah.
but like I said, if you're part of the modern world where you're seeing these companies network together, um, you know and often contractors, the contract manufacturing organization often knows more than
Mhm,
even the site who's going to be making the product. And then, of
mhm,
course, downstream, once we're talking post market collaboration, it's not as, you know, time readily available to have a big kickoff meeting. But if it's a big change, that's what I do. And
mhm,
that's what I've seen that works well.
mhm. So actually, what I'm hearing you say, which I've been thinking about for a while now, that there's an element of project management in all of our risk management activities. And maybe it's a project manager, or maybe it's another person responsible, that we should work together
Hmm.
as risk practitioners to make sure that risk related activities are particularly addressed and people are prepared. So I think that there's an element of project management associated with also the practice of risk management, right? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I like to hear that. I'm glad you picked up on that, because I think, frankly, that's something that's really important. I mean, let's take a step now into the manufacturing world where we're making this product and you're seeing design changes come through all of the time on it. You have
Mhm,
irons in the fire and fires to deal with expediting these changes. It seems like you may not always have the time, but I feel like you need to make the time to level set everyone on the team. And a project manager can do that, by setting out the expectations. And it doesn't have to be an elaborate project management session, but just, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to work on first. But as we move to automated systems,
mhm,
where you handle design changes in a system, it becomes very virtual and very compartmentalized, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So having some project management expertise to spearhead can be really effective. I always say, pay me now, pay me later. You're going to have to um, experience a lot of trouble if you don't do things right in the beginning at the forefront.
Hmm. I also see this as actually career development opportunity for risk practitioners is to grow into a project manager role with technical knowledge of risk management, and then try to actually facilitate these conversations and be seen more as a leader. I think that's an opportunity that we could really think about.
Yes, no,
So,
I agree.
so Brett, I want to ask you this because I've heard many times that, and it's public conversation, that sometimes the basic understanding of the risk management requirements, let's say according to 14971 or 13485, even the basic understanding is missing. Do you see that in your practice is having an issue in doing risk management effectively?
Most definitely. And again, I think this is part of the project management role is that they should be setting the expectation that everybody's in alignment on the procedure. If you haven't worked on a risk management, let's say in a while, you need to be realigned and level set. So I think that's an
Mhm.
also, I did work with another company about 10 years ago that did this very thing. This is a top Fortune 500 company, and they put together, a project lead and a project planner. And I
Mm,
like this approach. The project planner was more so focused on the timeline, but the project leader slash manager was really instrumental in making sure, again, we're trained on the product, we're trained on ISO 14971. And I don't mean a document exercise where we're signing off on a procedure. I mean, does
mhm,
everybody need to go through a refresher on 14971? And I think
mhm.
yes is the answer.
I would think so. Yes. Um, so that's a very fascinating point. That early on in the project, understand the gaps in the knowledge base, and it's not like people do not know this stuff. They might have taken the training a couple of years ago. They have forgotten about it. Refresh everybody, and for that lead person to understand where the gaps and strengths are in the team is very important for effective
Yes,
execution of risk management. Right.
agreed.
Oh,
Definitely.
okay, great, guys. So we are kind of halfway in our conversation. First of all, I want to welcome all of you. If you are just joining, my guest is Brett Travaglio, uh, very seasoned industry expert here with a broad, diverse experience. And we are talking about challenges and opportunities for the practice of risk management in our industry. But guys, this is not a webinar or a lecture. So I invite you to share your own perspective, and you can share that in the chat. Please don't hesitate to share your comments. What challenges you have faced in your practice of risk management, and what has worked for you? We would love to hear that from you. Let's learn from each other. So, Brett, let's continue our conversation. I know we are living in a very tough and dynamic regulatory environment, right? Things are kind of chaotic, right? We have heard what is happening at the FDA, including CDRH. A lot of turnover, a lot of chaos. How do you see things moving forward as far as risk management is concerned for medical devices? Can you share some of your thoughts on that?
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely can. Yeah, you're seeing, a downturn, in the regular agencies, where you're not seeing as many inspections, or you're not going to be, less guidance and feedback cycles. But I do think this gives us a good opportunity to actually improve our risk management program to better collaborate, with our companies. And, I think that, um, training to better collaborate, as we talked about earlier, is really
Hmm.
important. Um,
Hmm.
I believe that companies should plan for uncertainty right now in the enforcement, inspection readiness, and pre-market review processes. I think we should take a step back and say, okay, well, how can I improve my risk benefit and risk management programs in the entirety of that? We can strengthen our internal risk infrastructures. We can formalize cross-functional roles. We can do scenario planning, contingency planning, continuity planning, maintaining vigilant monitoring, so that our programs don't, start to collapse.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
during this environment that we're kind of in right now.
Brett, I think you are the second person who has shared this insight with me. Because what I'm hearing is that we need to build the strength from within to prepare for this chaos in our external world. We can't rely on the FDA to now tell us what our deficiencies are so we can go fix them. I had Michael Nilo on the program a few weeks ago, and he had worked at the FDA. Now he does his own consulting. Guys, the recording of that conversation is available on Let's Talk Risk. And he said the same thing. This is the time to kind of actually build the strength from within. And that's what I'm hearing you say. What an opportunity, I believe, for risk practitioners to play a leadership role in our organizations and help us build that strength. One of the things also, Brett, I just read is FDA has done a pilot of an AI assisted review, and now they are going to accelerate
Hmm.
AI assisted review through the agency. Uh, do you have some thoughts on that? How is that going to work out in the future?
Yeah. So can you kind of elaborate a little bit
Yeah.
more on what you
So
heard?
this,
Because I
yeah,
just want to
this
make
was
sure.
a yeah, this was a news that just came out yesterday, and I want to make sure all of our
Yeah.
colleagues here understand that they announced a AI assisted review, I believe, on the drug side for now, but
Right.
the current secretary, I believe, of current commissioner of FDA has announced an accelerated deployment of AI tools across the centers to assist in the review process. And the reason I bring this up here, Brett, is it's going to affect how we present our data about benefit risk about our device, our submission to the agency, and how it's going to be reviewed by AI plus a human reviewer. I think this is going to
Yeah.
change things a little bit. So
I
from your
yeah.
experience, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think, I saw that same information come out. I was looking at the FDA website earlier, and I believe I saw something to that effect. But I think what's really key is that, um, you know, now or before now, we've been using complaint data so much and clinical data so much to, help us figure out what's going on with our products and how we can, be knowledgeable about, are there any new hazards coming into play? Do I need to mitigate these risks any further? But now with AI, we can really tap into other companies, and
Hmm.
so much information is out there, and we can use AI to help us hone in on what other problems are out there in the industry in general. Before, you had to actually do searches on the computer, and it was very labor intensive,
Hmm.
to find out how similar products in competing, markets, handle, these product,
Hmm.
complaints and investigations and all that. But now with AI, we can really get so much more information about, these platform products, if you will. And I think that's really great.
But this also means that we'll have to up our game before we go to the FDA with our submission, right? Because if they are going
Right.
to use AI assisted review, we also need to have that information beforehand so we are prepared. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
I'm actually working with a company right now, and they're starting to train at the ground level. So everyone has the opportunity to learn more about artificial intelligence and how that can be used for leveraging purposes. And so they're offering classes, periodically, and you can, you know, take the whole, um, you know,
Hmm.
battery of courses that helps you better understand how to make it work. But they're
Hmm.
actually preparing teams. Um, a special project when you have little time in your regular job
Yeah.
to work on it. They're creating teams that are very knowledgeable about AI, and doing storyboards and things throughout the companies. So they're really bringing that AI, exposure and technology into the mix, and everybody's learning about it. So that's what I think companies really need to
Yeah, we have
start
to.
with. Yeah.
We have to. Now we have a very interesting question from Bijan. He's saying an interesting potential future is where AI produces the submissions and AI does the review. So where do we see the role of humans in that case? What are your thoughts
Interesting.
on that?
Interesting. Well, I mean, AI has to be driven. by a person, right? So you need to be able to ask the right questions when you're using AI. And, there's a template typically, as an example, using even chat GPT, where you have to ask the right questions so it gets the right information to you. So I think that's becoming more and more important that people get trained in order to do that. But I think, it doesn't really dismiss the people. It doesn't
Mhm.
take away. You still need the driver who understands the requirements of the product, how things are handled, everything about your stability, compatibility, your human testing, factors testing, usability. I mean, you need still someone who can drive that in order to use the AI beneficially. So I think that's a great point that was brought up. And again, it starts with training at the bottom and moving up through the top so we can develop those types of programs that allow us to do submissions and create technical files and submit them appropriately. So I think that's a great point.
Mhm. And also, I think we can play a role in really evaluating the output of the AI generated submission, for example.
Mhm.
And I can see a scenario where we have within our organization this, self-learning feedback loop where we generate an AI submission and we evaluate it using AI with a human in between all along the process flow, where we
Mhm.
are constantly refining this process within. And I can see the impact of that in getting our review timelines shortened. I do this analysis on a monthly basis where I review the time it takes for an 510K, for example, to be cleared. The median time is about 110 days, 120 days.
Mhm.
But the 20th percentile is half of that. So the question I ask is, what does it take to be in the 20th percentile consistently, right? Imagine how much time we could save. So the reason I mention all this is because there is so much opportunity for our colleagues in the industry today to make a difference, to learn these new tools, to your point,
Agree.
be at the cutting edge of that and take a leadership role. So what an interesting conversation, Brett. Of course, we didn't plan to have it go in these different directions, but let's continue to build on that. AI is going to play a major role in companies everywhere. We know that it is coming. How should we go about preparing ourselves? You mentioned training. Are you aware of any programs or training opportunities that people can take advantage of? How should we think about this?
Right. Well, I think I'm not specifically aware because I've been taking advantage of AI experiences that I can glean from some of my clients. So externally, I haven't really looked into that. But I think what would really facilitate this is having, once the companies learn the AI tool, they should prototype it just like we would prototype a project. Let's take a product that's going through the product development life cycle and
Mhm.
let's try it with one product. Let's prototype this so that we can see what works well, what doesn't work well, what are the lessons learned, and then we can start developing this as a regular tool. So I think there are some steps that we need to take, including training, like you mentioned.
Mhm. And just start playing around. There are so many tools which are freely available right now that we could try and see how it works, what output it's producing, how it can help us, and maybe come up with a proposal that you can pitch to your senior leadership and get support for further work. I see this more as an opportunity, and I know we are overwhelmed in our day-to-day work. We have so much to do. We can't take on any extra work, but I want to encourage our colleagues to think about this as an opportunity and not as a problem to confront. So, Brett, what a fascinating conversation, guys. Again, the floor is open. We still have 5 minutes. So please make sure you are sharing your own perspective, your own understanding of what is going on in the world and what should we be talking about. If you have any ideas for future conversations, please mention that in the chat as well. I want to hear from you and I want you to be a part of this conversation. So, look, I think we have a question here, Brett. You mentioned risks from clinical trials. In a blinded study, how should device deficiencies that did not result in adverse events be handled, like commercial device complaints? So that sounds like an interesting question. Brett, do you have any thoughts on that?
Right. So, we look at commercial devices and those complaints, and I kind of alluded to, this circle, if you will, where, we start at clinical and, then we get some complaint data. But we got to make sure that this gets filtered back into the FMEA that we're working on if we're talking about specific tools. And so that would be, what are the new hazards that we're seeing? Is there a change in the probability of occurrence? How does medical in your company feel about this? Um, it needs to kind of circle back, and you need to have your engineers look at these FMEAs, whether it's from a design perspective, a user perspective in this case,
Mhm.
and how it can link to even a process perspective. So filtering it
Mhm.
back, communicating all the systems together in a round circle.
Yes, that's a great point. Now, I know we are running short on time, but this is such a fascinating comment from Carol. I want to share that with everybody. There's so much promise for AI in healthcare. I think, for example, using AI for ambient listening in hospital rooms will help doctors and nurses with follow up. With AI would also help up hospitals. I think also leveraging AI for automating the claims process would help hospitals reduce risk for not getting paid in a timely manner. Excellent point, Carol. Thank you for sharing. And I had heard about this ambient AI on a podcast I recently I listened to, and this idea came to my mind. Look, how much do we struggle with documentation in our work, right? And we can document everything, but this idea about ambient AI, deploying it for capturing knowledge, capturing the problems that we face on a daily basis, which is what the idea is for relieving doctors from the time they have to spend filling a form on a computer. They don't even look at you when you go meet with them, right? They don't have time. So much is coming in our world. Carol, thank you for sharing this excellent comment. Brett, I know we are running short on time, and guys, this always happens. Time flies. 30 minutes are gone. But I want to give Brett a couple of moments to collect her thoughts and share with us just a few key takeaway points from this conversation. And in the
Absolutely.
meantime, yes, so Brett, in the meantime, I would like to share some announcements with our colleagues. Guys, we just came back from an amazing conference organized by Bijan Ilahi, who is in the audience today. It was a safety risk management conference in Amsterdam. I was so fortunate to have this opportunity to go there and give a presentation, give a workshop, meet a lot of people. We're gonna have a session with Bijan in a couple of weeks from now as a follow-up, key takeaways from this conference, and tell you a little bit more about the next conference, which is going to happen, sometime next year. So please make sure you keep an eye on my LinkedIn feed when the announcement goes out. We're going to meet again to talk about this conference. It was an exciting, energizing experience for all of us. The second announcement I want to share with you guys is that I have just launched a new workshop around FMEAs. Everybody tells you that FMEA alone is not sufficient for risk analysis under ISO 14971. But nobody tells you how to use your current FMEA and connect it to everything else around risk for your medical device. And this is what I want to help you learn in this workshop. The announcement has just gone out today. The next session is going to be on May 21st. Reach out to me if you're interested in learning more about it, and I'll give you all the information. So, with that, Brett, the floor is yours. Please share just a few key takeaway points with us today.
Yeah, so key takeaways. I think again, the one of the biggest things that, I talked about was this training for collaboration. This has to be a conscious effort upfront that we talk about, how can we better collaborate? What needs to come into play? I think we need to talk to people within our organization and really see, what are their feelings? What are their opinions about how we can better align across these functions for effective risk discussions? So that would be my number one key takeaway for today.
Wonderful. Thank you for highlighting the bread. We know collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. I've heard that so many times, proves to be challenging. And your point is don't assume it's going to happen on its own. Plan for it. Prepare your people. Give them some training and give them the tools so that they can collaborate effectively. What a wonderful message to end with, Brett. I want to thank you for taking the time and sharing your insights with us. Thank you, everybody, for showing up once again. You show up week after week in these sessions. If you are new to this platform, we do this every Friday at 11 Eastern. Please show up. Block your calendar if you're interested in these types of very casual conversations about risk management and related topics in our medical device industry. And just show up. So, with that, thanks everybody. Once again, I wish you a very good weekend ahead and look forward to seeing you once again next week. Thank you.
Thank you.